អរគុណមុននឹងខ្ញុំជូនវេទិកាទៅលោក Dennis Halpin ខ្ញុំសូមជម្រាបជូនទីទៅជីវប្រវត្តិរបស់លោក Dennis Halpin. Dennis Halpin served as the Cambodian analysis of the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research between 1985 and 1987. In August 1986, Dennis traveled to Thailand to visit Cambodian refugee camps along the country's eastern border. From 1987 to 1989, Dennis worked on Asian issues in the Office of United Nations Political Affairs in the State Department. Cambodia was a key UN issue at that time, including diplomatic efforts to end the Vietnamese occupation of Cambodia and negotiation on an international agreement to restore peace to the country. Those negotiations led to the agreement on a comprehensive political settlement of the Cambodian conflict signed in Paris on October 23, 1991, which included a mandate to conduct a free and fair elections. Those elections were held in 1993 under the supervision of the United Nations Transition Authority in Cambodia, UNTAC in short. Dennis Halpin has ties to Asia going back over decades to 1971, when he arrived in South Korea as a Peace Corps volunteer. He was a Foreign Service officer with the U.S. Department of State for 23 years, serving at overseas posts in Seoul, Toronto, Busan, Taipei, and Beijing. He then served over a decade as a senior staff member of a House Foreign Affairs Committee, advising on Asian issues, including Cambodia. He visited Cambodia in June of last year as a House staff member and attended a session of the Cambodian tribunal where Khmer Rouge leaders Luan Chir and Khieu Samphan were on trial for the crimes and the crimes against humanity. His article on the floor July 28 election, titled "The Fair Promise to Cambodia," was posted in August online by the Foreign Affairs publication, The National Interest. Dennis is currently serving as a visiting scholar at the U.S. Korea Institute at the School of Advanced International Studies, Johns Hopkins University. Please help me welcome Mr. Halpin. Welcome, Mr. Halpin.
I'm sorry I don't speak Khmer. I do speak Korean. I just came from Korea where my son, who is a lieutenant in Special Operations Command, just married a Korean girl last weekend. And today is his birthday, so it's got to be a good day for Cambodia to have a rally. He's in Guam right now having his honeymoon. Anyway, you didn't come to hear about that. Oh, good. I'm glad. There's two words we should look at. Never again. Never again were the words that were spoken in 1945 at the end of World War II, when the Holocaust finally came to an end. The Holocaust Museum has these words. After the Holocaust, the world united behind two simple words, never again. These words represent a promise to past and future generations that we will do everything we can to ensure the horrors of the Holocaust are not repeated. Never again. And yet we know, 3 short decades after the guns fell silent in 1945, 3 short decades later in 1975, the specter of genocide rose from hell again and walked the earth. This time, it did not walk over the gray skies of Europe. It walked over the sunny skies of Southeast Asia, the sunny skies of Cambodia. And this was a tremendous failure for the world. The world international community had promised at the end of the war, never again. Our First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, had gone to Paris in 1948 to sign the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which said, never again. And yet, as you all know, the Khmer Rouge came into Phnom Penh, and they began another genocide. The reports indicated, I was the Cambodia analyst in the 80s, when the reports were flooding in from Cambodia. Horrific reports. At that point, the Vietnamese had come into Cambodia, and some of the records were coming out of what had happened during the Khmer Rouge era. 2 million out of 8 million Cambodian people were killed, as you all know. I'm sure many of you had family members. And the world had said never again, but it did happen again. So, I wanted to read to you also, at that point, the world failed in its promise to Cambodia. You all might remember Prince Sirikh Matak from the House of Sisiwat. When the Americans were leaving Phnom Penh, the American ambassador, John Gunther Dean, offered to take Prince Sirikh Matak out of Cambodia. And he said, I must stay with my people. But he wrote a letter, a very famous letter that I want to quote today. He sent it to the American ambassador, and he stayed behind. Some people say he was shot in a stadium by a firing squad. Henry Kissinger said he might have been shot in the stomach and taken 3 days to die of bleeding. We're not exactly sure. But here's what Mr. Prince Sirikh Matak said. I thank you very sincerely for your letter and for your offer to transport me towards freedom. I cannot, alas, leave in such a cowardly fashion. As for you, and in particular for your great country, I never believed for a moment that you would have the sentiment of abandoning a people which has chosen liberty. You have refused us your protection, and we can do nothing about it. You leave us, and it is my wish that you and your country will find happiness under the sky. But mark it well that if I shall die here on the spot and in my country that I love, it is too bad because we are all born and must die one day. I have only committed the mistake of believing in you, the Americans. Please accept excellently, my dear friend, my faithful and friendly sentiments, Prince Sirikh Matak. But the failure to Cambodia did not end there. I wrote a paper last month. You can see the national interest posted. I called it The Failed Promise to Cambodia. Because then the United Nations, I said, I think it was in survivor's guilt. They came to Cambodia. As I said, I worked on UN issues in the 1980s. We worked with the United States, worked actually with China and several countries to end the Vietnamese occupation of Cambodia. And then the United Nations, because they remembered that they had not kept the promise, never again, they set up UNTAC, the United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, and they supervised elections in 1993. They spent $1.5 billion to have this election, to see that there were fair and free elections and that Cambodia became a democracy. But we all know what happened. We all know Hun Sen did not really recognize the results of the election. He said, I'm going to stay as co-prime minister with Prince Ranariddh. And he stayed in power, and then he pushed finally Prince Ranariddh aside a few years later. And so he has continued to rule for 28 years. And as I pointed out in my paper, a very disturbing thing, a shameful thing for the UN and the international community, is that Hun Sen is a former Khmer Rouge. Hun Sen was a leader of the battalion in eastern Cambodia. He left the Khmer Rouge not because he was horrified by the genocide, not because he opposed human rights violations, but Pol Pot had decided to purge him. So he ran across the border into Vietnam and came back with the Vietnamese. But till this day, he bears a scar. He has a glass eye, because when the Khmer Rouge took Phnom Penh in 1975, and when they killed Prince Sirikh Matak, Hun Sen was there with the Khmer Rouge marching into your capital city, the capital city of Cambodia. This we cannot forget. This is a great cause of concern. It should be for the international community. I know that Sam Ramsey wrote a letter in August to Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and said, you must come back, you must look at the resolution that the United Nations passed, and you must help guarantee that these elections that were so flawed, the July 28th elections, that you must come in and assure that there are fair and free elections in Cambodia. I wanted to read to you briefly from the UN resolution that was passed back in 1992. This is the resolution that's, let me take a few of the quotes. This is what the United Nations promised the people of Cambodia.